Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Philip K. Dick Talks. I'm very happy to have my friend and producer Erik Lee here. Erik is an award-winning director. He worked on the X-Files spinoff, The Lone Gunman, and since then has been a co-producer of dramatic television for over a decade, producing shows such as Monk, Burn Notice, Hand of God, Damien, and Mayans. Today, Erik, first of all, will share his newest film that has been on the festival circuit, winning many awards. Wide Awake Over Bridgewater, and he will also share with the audience maybe some nuggets, some pearls of wisdom about how to break into this really difficult business. Welcome, Erik.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to see you again.
It's a while. It feels very strange living in this time during the pandemic.
It does, and you know it's been what, a year since I saw you in New York, a little bit more maybe.
That's right. It's almost a year to the date. I think our festival was it like March 20th or so?
Yeah.
March 22nd. So yeah, it's coming to a year. So how has the journey been since then?
The journey has been good. It's been obviously COVID slowed a lot of things down, but the industry is back up and running again. There's a lot of precautions being taken, obviously, because of COVID. So there's a lot of strict rules in place now about filming, which is good, but the industry is back up and running.
Good. That's good to know. Just give me a second here. We're definitely, this is a challenging period for a lot of us in the film world. And yet we probably need film and stories more than ever to get us through our challenges and our difficulties. So, before we begin on your journey, I want to first have the audience check a little clip. It's actually a trailer of your of a film you worked on, Wide Awake Over Bridgewater. And so let's do this. Let's talk about it. Let's show the trailer to the audience, and let's follow up shortly afterwards.
What if I was 10 minutes late tomorrow? Would you still wait for me?
Of course.
What if I was 10 years late? Or 20? You were getting to somebody else.
I'd wait patiently for you, even as an adult.
You're such a jerk. I told you I'm not becoming an adult.
What is this place?
Michael? Michael? It's me. They brought me back.
Okay, well, that's just a little clip. Is this how long is the film?
So the short is it's roughly about 16 minutes long.
Okay, great. I tell you, when I first saw it, when you first send it through our programmers, and I saw it, it really reminded me some of those those 90s shows. It has that sort of an innocent and a very foreboding quality, which I really don't see too much in today's shows. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration for making this short.
So I had written a script, a feature-length script that I had submitted to the Nichols Screenwriting Competition here in LA back in 2016. It actually wound up making it to the quarterfinals of that screenwriting competition, and it was basically a feature film. It got a little bit of buzz. It went around town a little bit, but it didn't get picked up. Or obviously it didn't get produced. So I figured, creatively, I wanted to take that feature-length script and do a short proof of concept that would show people the idea, kind of the style, the music, what this story is about. And I decided to do a short film, and it was interesting because I was trying to figure out what's the best way to combine, a feature-length material into 16 minutes, and which was problematic in itself. But I think, I think it captured the essence of the feature film. And if you look at the short, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, so it kind of works on its own. But it was really to try to capture interest for people to read the feature and to develop the feature or make it into a TV show.
Well, I'm definitely looking to reading that script of yours because it's really absolutely fascinating. Walk us through the step by step. Because there are a lot of our subscribers are filmmakers or filmmakers in the making. So many of them are curious: what is the first thing you do? Okay, so you just won the Nichols, or and so what is it? Walk us through a step by step, and how do you go about taking something from concept to product?
Okay. That's a really good question. So I had tried to figure out a way to take that longer fictional piece and make it into a short film. I came up with over a dozen iterations of the short script. Some were very music. It was almost like a music video. And then I have some producers I work with who are also close friends of mine. And they suggested, you need more dialogue in the script. So I thought, okay, instead of making it a music kind of montage, I should actually have scenes from the feature that will show, give an essence of what it would be like. So I incorporated that through suggestions from my producers, Mark Lynch, Ron Jaeger, Kevin Settle. And then I started to, from there, the interesting thing is it's such a daunting task to make a short film. Like you really have to commit wholeheartedly. And what I did is I initially started casting for the two main characters, the girl and the guy. And as we were casting, I came upon two wonderful actors. They blew me away in their auditions, and immediately I knew it was them, in these roles. And from that point on, I was still, to be honest, I was still trying to figure out if I wanted to commit to making this this short, because I thought it was going to be quite overwhelming, and there was a lot of moving parts to it. But then after watching their performances, I decided, to jump in 100%. And, it wasn't an easy task. I work in the TV industry. I pretty much pulled all the favors I could, from camera rentals to eventually, asking visual effects companies to give me free visual effects. Everything was done as a favor. So I knew that at the beginning that was going to be tough, and it was a lot tougher than I imagined. But again, we jumped in wholeheartedly, and we worked on it for quite a long time, and we're very happy with the results. It was, I think it's a nice little short love story with a sci-fi twist, and I'm very proud of it.
How long did it take from concept from actually having the script into the product? How many was it? A year or two, or longer, or what's the basic time frame for that?
I would say a year. What happened was, as we were casting it, we found these wonderful actors, and then what happened was I started scouting locations at the same time, and that took a long time. There was one night where I thought I would shoot in one location. I was driving through downtown LA, and I stumbled upon the garage where you see all those tires, and it's
right.
You almost can't create a set like that, because it was that whole garage was tires and cats and stuff you'd never see in an ordinary garage, and you'd never be able to art direct how crazy that garage was. So then I incorporated that into the script. I also had a period where I was trying to find locations for their house in the suburbs, and that wound up being a huge expense on its own, because we wound up shooting at the Disney Ranch in northern LA, and that was probably one of my most expensive costs. And they still gave me a discount because I had worked on a show that filmed there, Mayans, so I had a connection there, and they wound up giving me a discount. But still, that was an extremely expensive day and extremely expensive set to have. But in the end, in that location, there was I knew there were 3 different parts that I could use for that. There was the house, there was a field, there was a little pond. So I knew I could shoot. I knew if I got that location for the day, I could shoot multiple scenes in that location. And that was one of our biggest days for sure. And the other thing too is, when you look at the short, we shot it with just one camera. Believe it or not, we shot 2/3 of the film without sound. And that was actually, there were 2 reasons for that. One was so it wouldn't slow us down, because we only had one camera. And then the other reason was cost, but then the other reason also were some locations. We had a location near the airport, which is the fence scene you see in the short, and there were planes flying overhead every 20 seconds, and you literally could not hear a word of dialogue they were saying. So in the end, when we were prepping, I decided, let's just shoot it all without sound, MOS, and we'll just add the sound later. And you would never tell that there was 10.
Yeah, this is like a total surprise to me. Total surprise.
Yeah, so that location, there's literally planes flying overhead every 10 seconds. And then if I pan off to the right, I got so creative with that location, because if you pan off to the right, it's a neighborhood. You see modern houses, there's people walking their dogs, there's dogs barking. So like it was definitely something we creatively managed to make it look like, like Nova Scotia, countryside.
Is that near an Air Force base or something? Or because it seemed like it was near some sort of military base.
So that was the design of it, but believe it or not, that's right next to LAX, the airport here in LA.
Oh, interesting.
So literally, you're hearing these planes flying overhead. If in the distance there's a beach which you don't even see, but we're right near the water. And again, it's a huge airport, and we just decided to shoot without sound so that you wouldn't, obviously you wouldn't hear all that stuff. And
well, it did save you all that ADR work, that's for sure.
We basically had to ADR that entire scene, but you would never know, I don't think.
Right, absolutely. I'm just curious. The one thing that, as I mentioned to the audience and to, is that separates this short from other shorts I've seen in the festival and other NMTV is the mood. You really capture something that's very elusive, and which I've seen in shows like the X-Files, occasional episodes of the X-Files. It's something very special, very intimate, and yet very foreboding, something different. So is this something that just emerged naturally, or did you have that in mind from the beginning? And if that's the case, how did you go about creating that mood? Because that elusive it factor in my book is really the key to so much out there, and really having a successful show.
Oh, thank you. You know, I knew going into this little story, and it's part of my feature length script as well, that to really care about these characters, you really have to spend a moment with them when things are happy, and you can see the love between these two people. And that was the whole purpose behind the opening scenes when she's giving him the ring, and they're having a wonderful day in the countryside. And also, you really want to establish a connection between those two. And the great thing is those actors made it very easy for me, because you look at on camera at their looks at each other, and you can sense that there is something there. So they were just so genuine in their emotions, and they were really, you could really feel it on film. And that really helped, because I wanted to go from this light day in the countryside to all of a sudden she disappears, things get dark, and then obviously you don't know what happens to her until the end. So I definitely wanted that transition from a happy-go-lucky day to, oh no, like what happened to this girl and where did she disappear to where you find out what happened to her, 50 years later.
Right. So it's supposed to take place in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
Yep, like 68.
Right. I mean, that's one thing that I found that it was the great acting on directing on your part, is that they really convey a sense of innocence.
Yeah.
And that's not so easy to do, because a lot of actors today, the young ones, they're overacting and they're projecting a certain image. Cool, but this is something there that was more typical of that time period, maybe in the 50s and 60s, and less so of today, which everything is wrapped with irony and this, there was something there that was really typical. So I know your film showed at our festival and won Best Short, Science Fiction Short, but it also has a screen at various festivals, right? I did was it Holly Shorts or Holly
Shorts. It won at Life, Long Island International Film Festival. It won Best Screenplay in Washington D.C. It was an AT&T semifinalist for their annual short film festival. It won honorable mention at the Redstones. It's played at a lot of places, and I've been extremely thrilled with the results. And I think like I said, for me it's a beautiful, in my mind it's a beautiful little love story, and I'm very proud of it.
And so right now, what's the future? I mean, you're clearly the pandemic has put a dent on people's plans, but I presume you're shopping it, or you're talking with producers and other writers or other showrunners. What tell us a little bit about the future, because I don't want to see this go away. I want to see this become part of a big show. I really do. I mean it. I mean, this is the kind of thing I would like to see every Monday or every Friday. I go in and to see something about this or related to this. So tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, to tell you the truth, because of COVID, we've had to take a little step back, and we all kind of have gone on to other shows. I'm working on a new show right now, and for the moment, it's taken a little bit of a back step just because my work schedule is so busy. But the goal is still to try to make this into either a series or a feature film. And I think the story is there. I think the characters are there. I think this, I think this is a good calling card for people to watch, to want to read the feature or the series script. So we've taken a little step back for a second to work on our day jobs, so to speak. But it's definitely in the works where we want to get out there and pitch this and try to get more interest. We're actually, we've done the film festival circuit. There's maybe a couple more that we're waiting to see if to get the results on, and those are a couple big ones that we're waiting on. And after that, we'll still try to hit the doors.
Great. Now, do you your plan for this is to turn this into a feature, or is this part of a longer running show with something more than just a feature? I mean, or you're basically you're open to either one?
To be honest, I'm open to either one. I had initially conceived the story as a feature, and it works. I think it works great as a feature, but in this day and age, there's so much content there's so much need for content for television, whether it's streaming or network, that I actually started thinking about, what if this was to become a series? So I created kind of some different story arcs about what would happen if it became a series and where the series would go. So I kind of have it both ways. I have it as a feature, which I'm very happy with, but I also have it started developing it as a TV series as well. And that's still a work in progress in itself, because I've done a first draft, a couple drafts of the pilot episode, and knowing where it would go, but I'd still like to take another stab at it and shop it around.
Yeah, there may be some other producers that you can meet or hook up with that would be very susceptible. Vince Gilligan, some of the ones who are behind some of the X-Files, because I really see fitting into that whole mode. It's different, but that kind of thing. And I really don't see I haven't seen too many shows really since that time period come out. I mean, there are obviously a lot of sci-fi shows, and some of them are really great, but there's something there that you guys definitely hold on to and let me know, because I'm psyched. So, so we started out by letting the audience know that you're in television. You've been doing television for a long time. It started way back. Seems like another century ago with the Lone Gunman, right? Is that tell us a little bit about Erik Lee before joining the Lone Gunman. Tell us a little bit about what was going on and share with us whatever you want about how did you even get in working in that set, because in that capacity, because there are a lot of us out there wondering, well, I want to work in Hollywood. I work for television, but how do I go about it? I mean, it seems like a Byzantine kind of, here you go, the Lone Gunman staring back at you. So tell us a little bit about it. I mean, how do you get your foot in the door? Or is it just luck, or you want a contest? Or tell us a little bit.
I had an interesting route to get into TV. I went to Boston University Film School for grad school, and I had made a couple shorts back then. And again, this was ages ago. This was in the 1990s, where I made two shorts that both won U.S. College Television Awards back then, and mine had won for, there's 6 regions in the U.S. Two of my shorts had won for basically best drama for the New England region. The second time I won, I got flown out to LA for the award ceremony, and it turns out one of the co-producers of NYPD Blue at the time was one of the judges, and he loved my short. He asked if I would come out to interview, with Stephen Bochco Productions. And so I did. And I started off as a production assistant. Back then they had almost a producer's program where they would start you off as a production assistant and move you up to becoming a producer. So I kind of started in that capacity, thinking I would move up the ladder and become a producer on one of his TV shows. And I started off that way. I started off as a production assistant for a show called Total Security. Then I moved over to a show called Brooklyn South. I kind of segued into post-production. And then from there, I kind of started branching out, and I just kept getting more and more work in post-production. And I kind of just, moved up the ladder that way, from show to show. And then eventually getting into, for example, the Lone Gunman and a lot of the other shows you mentioned.
Now, tell us a little bit. The Lone Gunman, did you get a chance to meet the cast, or was a lot of it was those post-production work?
Yeah, no, it was. That was such an interesting. Every show you work on is pretty interesting because it's all. You're working with extremely talented, creative writers. And obviously some legends of our time, like Chris Carter, who created the X-Files. Right. And, even Vince Gilligan was a showrunner, executive producer on that show. And he was the nicest, sweetest executive producer. And, you're just surrounded by these incredible, creative, geniuses, so to speak. And you get to absorb their energy and their storytelling perspectives. And it was a great experience. I'll tell you a funny story is, Chris Carter at the time, he's a big surfer. So he would come every morning with a surfboard on top of his car.
Oh, wow.
He'd literally come straight from the surf. He had a shower right next to his office. He would shower and just jump in meetings. And I was awesome. and I always thought, he's got the life. And it was amazing. And then years later, I followed suit and I became a surfer. So.
That's amazing. I remember reading about him when it first came out, and I was saying to myself, a surfer doing a sci-fi show? I'm like, come on. And then I was, and then that's got to be a con. He can't possibly be a surfer. But then I looked at him and said, yeah, he does look like a surfer. Yeah. And then I was blown away by the show. So obviously, there's something to that. And then later you became a surfer, right?
Yeah, and then I became a surfer. I'd say maybe 10 years later. But I fell in love with the sport, and now I continue doing it.
Yeah, my cousin, I have a cousin who actually won several surfing in Florida, several surfing contests. He's very big. He's huge. Now his son is the one who takes over and he sells the son is the one who's winning. But he back in the 70s, the mid 80s, he was winning a lot of competitions there. So
that's great.
So great. So you do Lone Gunman. So what comes next? What's the next show? A big show that you're co-producing?
I had. I'm trying to think what was after Lone Gunman. I've done quite a few. I did Lone Gunman. I then went on to do. I think from Lone Gunman, I might have gone on to do American Dreams. I did Damien for effects. I did.
Tell us a little bit about Damien. When I was growing up, when I was in my early 20s, my dream was to write. At that time, that's ages ago. But I had hopes for another Omen kind of a story, like Omen's number 77 or something. Yeah. And when I saw that, the show is on, I said, I got to catch this, and Damien had, I believe, 2 runs, right? Was it one run, one
season? One season. That was a great show to work on. And I've done a few shows with Glenn Mazzara, who was the who developed that from the movie. And Glenn is an amazing showrunner, and I absolutely love working with him. And I plan to work with him in the future on other projects if as much as I can. He's just so talented, and that show was great. It was based on the movie, which I absolutely loved. I'm a huge horror fan. Right. And it took that same premise of of the son, but now the son was now grown up and he was a photographer. I love seeing all these photos there. He's a photographer. He lives in New York. He's literally just found out that he's the son of the devil, and it was
It's kind of a hard job to live up to.
Yeah. Anyway, we had a lot of fun with that series. It was because it was the character was discovering that he's supposed to be evil, but intrinsically he wasn't evil. So he had these, there were things that were happening around him that he just couldn't help. So it was just a really cool series to work on. And again, I'm a huge fan of Glenn Mazzara's work and Glenn Mazzara as a person. So I just loved working with him.
And the show had Barbara Hershey, a big horror from back in the 70s and 80s.
Yep. Yep. And she was great. It's funny because you get to work with a lot, in my job, I get to work with actors on their voiceovers and their ADR, and you get to meet these icons of movies and television, and they're a lot. You're amazed, after seeing them on screen for so many years and then working with them, you're just, sometimes you have to pinch yourself and say, this is pretty cool.
You mentioned Glenn Mazzara. I've heard that in Hollywood there are only basically about 100 showrunners or thereabouts. I mean, people that can make a difference.
Yeah.
And there's almost this mystique that has emerged around the showrunner. I mean, people don't know what a director is. They know about a writer. They know a showrunner. There's something there that's more than just a position. So tell us a little bit about from an industry perspective, what a showrunner does. I mean, why is he so critical to a show?
So what's interesting is, in television, the showrunners are usually the creators of the show, and basically they have creative control over the contents, from anything from casting to hiring the DP and the art department, and they have final say in all the small details that go on in a show, including the sound mix, visual effects. That person has final say. So they're really, a good showrunner is worth their weight in gold. They earn their money, they earn their income 10 times over because they have so much responsibility in a show. So the interesting thing is in features, you would find, that role goes a lot to directors. But in the TV world, that responsibility from a week to week basis on creating the content and the stories and the actors and the look and the editing and everything, the final decision all goes to the showrunners, those executive producers.
So was Chris Carter, was he the showrunner of the show? Oh, he was
So he was the showrunner. He was the exec producer. I forget. Usually what happens is there's a couple different types of showrunners. Sometimes there's a showrunner who just works on the scripts, and then they'll have a production showrunner who manages all of the production day-to-day ins and outs. And Chris, I think, Chris ultimately had the say in everything, but right. I think he really was developing the stories. It's been such a long time, I can't remember if we had a separate production showrunner, but there usually is. There's usually somebody who's managing all the day-to-day production stuff.
So as you know, our festival now has a screenwriting competition. We actually began last year. So I'm getting all these queries, or our programmers are getting all these queries. Well, anticipating that their screenplay will be this great, so my question is, I'm sure you've gotten this before from a lot of people, is say someone does win, has a fairly good script, and he's and he's pretty maybe like yours, Nickel, or some other contest, prestigious contest, and they want that show on Netflix or that show on Hulu or Amazon. So what is the first thing they do? I mean, what's the realistic thing? Because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of filmmakers, they have already the eyes on the stars without really getting their feet wet. But let's say you wanted to talk to someone who's really serious and whose product may be good, maybe really good. What is the first thing you think you would advise them to do?
You know, I think it's such a good question, because a lot of what happens, you know, first of all, I think it's very good that they submit to screenwriting competitions, because if you can win some awards, it'll show that you're not just writing, you know, it'll give you some almost street cred, where people will all of a sudden understand, okay, well, other people thought this script was good enough for you to submit elsewhere. The biggest, I'd say, thing someone should do is to try to get an agent, and that's not an easy task. Right. But I would say, you know, what happens is with these studios, they're afraid of being sued. They're afraid of reading something and then creating a content that's similar to that, and so a lot of times these studios won't read anything unless you have an agent. They also don't have the time to read every script, so unless it comes from an agent, they don't give it the credibility of somebody who sent it through an agent. So the key is to try to find, you know, if you can get some awards or submit it to festivals, and then try to get an agent through that. Have, you know, and I think and a lot of times it's the same way, unfortunately, with agents, is they won't read just anybody's script, because unfortunately a lot of scripts are, you know, can be pretty terrible. Right. So unless it has some sort of, you know, like let's say an award, a couple of awards, or it's you know, it's got some good word of mouth to it, then they won't read it. So I think the best way to get in is to really try to find an agent.
An agent. You know, it kind of reminds me back in the days when you had films like Pi. Remember Pi with Darren Aronofsky? And he just shot it and directed it. MOS, as a matter of fact, the whole film without sound, just did the hour afterwards. And then he just wanted Sundance, but it seems like today that seemed to like almost like a direct route. Like you came out of Sundance, or you came out of but unfortunately, it seems like today, even if you come out of a good festival, it's not guaranteed anymore, because there's so many. It's almost like the whole business is being fragmented. Yeah. So great that you come out of maybe Sundance or some other festival. That's the biggest one. But I know of filmmakers that are still shopping their product around, and they, you know, won multiple festivals. So that's so you would say representation is really the key thing, very important. And then from there, it goes from there where you get.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most important thing, because again, it's so, you know, even now, you know, having, you know, my script has won, you know, or got to the quarterfinals of Nichols, you know, you need something that'll separate your script from the others. And even now, like even having you know, made it to the quarterfinals, it doesn't guarantee my script's going to get read, but at least it puts it a little higher on the stack of 20 other scripts that they're going to, you know, that they have in front of them. So,
well, at least they'll read it and actually give you some good feedback versus, I'll get to it next week, and then you never hear from them. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, the key, I guess, being part of a filmmaker is being able to still feel fresh and still deal with the bumps along the road that come invariably while you're trying to get your product out there. And that's where we're trying to help people out with in any way we can to get them into the right due diligence, the right work habits. So tell us, so you do Damien, right? And so that was only one season, but there were other shows that were, tell us a little bit about the other shows.
So I did, so after Damien, I think I went straight from Damien to Mayans, which was the biker gang show.
Oh, yes.
And here's what's,
I remember him. Almost, yes.
Yes, that was also a fun show to work on. it was, Mayans was great just because it was so different. It was a biker gang show, and the cast was great. Everyone was so gung ho about making that show. What's interesting about that show is I had actually started shooting my short during that show. So I was co-producing Mayans, and that was a pretty crazy shoot where I was working from, let's say, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. on Mayans, and then I would start editing my short from 8 p.m. till about midnight or 1 a.m. in the morning, and I did that consecutively for a couple of months, and I really almost got burnt out because I was literally just working around the clock, and I would it was that thing where, I had told myself, okay, I'm going to commit to doing this short, but to get it done, I had to work, the only times when I was free was from 8 to midnight, 8 to 1 a.m. And then I would work, so I was working 15, 18-hour days, just trying to get the short done while working on this series that also I had to dedicate all my time to. So it was a pretty crazy run for me.
5 hour, lots of those 5 hour energy drinks, right?
Very little sleep. Very little sleep.
What were some of your responsibilities for the Mayans? What were you doing day to day?
So Mayans, I was co-producing, I was handling all of post-production. So I was overseeing the editors, visual effects, sound mix, anything to do with post, I was taking care of. And we had, believe it or not, that show we had over usually about 100 plus visual effects every week. And, to get those turned around on a weekly basis was just such a challenge. And, my coworker, Mark Lynch, who was also a producer on my short, he was there with me, and we, the two of us got it done together. But he's been with me on a number of shows, and he's been my rock to help me get through, the shows and working on my short film as well. So I'd say, as far as getting a short done, it's great to have that person who you can bounce ideas off of and who really wants to do it as much as you do. And fortunately, I had somebody at work, who's also a friend of mine, who was able, who was with me every step of the way. And I have two other producers, Hans Jaeger and Kevin Settle, who are also invaluable in getting, the short done and sending it out to festivals and feedback. And just my whole producing team was terrific. Joe Taylor as well was amazing at doing all the groundwork during the short. So it's only a challenge.
Did you get to meet, work, or at least talk with Almost? I mean, was he around, or it was just mostly
Yeah, no, I did. And he's such a great guy. And if you meet him in person, he's seen it and done it all, as we all know. And he's so cool and collected. And I remember he, even in one of our ADR sessions, he brought his dog, and we were playing with his dog, in between takes. And he was telling us about his dog was a care dog and was this very special dog. And he now owned this dog, but we bonded over the fact that we both love dogs. And he's a very gentle and sweet man. And he also, there's actors like that are so good at their ADR, their voiceovers, that you give them a sentence to do and they nail it on, they do it once or twice, and that you don't have to do it again. It's just so perfect. And he's a perfect example of that.
So I got a question from one of our subscribers on our chat room. The question is, how do you keep a fresh perspective when working on your own project when having such a busy work schedule?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. You know, I'm not gonna lie, you lose a lot of perspective because in the end, you're really, you know, like you're really you have to change your mindset from one to the other because my work schedule and especially on Mayans was so difficult, and you're working and you're so drained from that, and then all of a sudden to switch it and then start working on your own projects, you really just got to be very passionate about your own project and what you want to accomplish out of it, and be how you want to be creative with it. For me, that was a great, you know, I got to work on Mayans and these other shows, and it's always rewarding, you know, being creative, but to be even more creative, doing your own stuff and directing and really having, you know, the final say on everything. That, you know, that gives you an extra little boost to finish the work.
Now, on the work on you had already done your principal round of photography, right? With on the short. So you were actually working on the editing and the post. Is that correct? Or were you actually shooting as well? I mean, how did that work out?
No, so believe it or not, I did three. It was a 3-day shoot for the short,
Okay.
but they were spread out over a couple months because what would happen is my lead actress Alexis, she had a day job that she had to work on, so I would try to get these locations, but then all of a sudden she wouldn't be available during those times, so I would have to move the shoot date to another date where the location and she was available. So it took a lot of juggling, but it was filmed over just 3 days, you know, which is very short compared, you know, seeing as the amount of footage we got for 3 days. But it was over a number of months. So I would plan one shoot day, then I would get those dailies and I would start cutting that. And then maybe like 2 months later, I would shoot the next scene, you know, or I would have the second day. And then a few months later, I would have the final day.
Well, that's awesome that you're able to do that, because a lot of people can barely hold on to one job, let alone work on two well, you know. So what you worked on? Is Mayan still on the air, or that's already?
So Mayans is still on the air. You know, I now have another friend of mine who's actually co-producing that show. I left after season 1.
Okay.
I went off to go do another show with Glenn Mazzara. I did The Dark Tower for Amazon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, do you know it? Okay.
I'm familiar with the Dark Tower, but not the show, but the whole series. Yes.
Okay, so that was we did a pilot for Amazon. It was such a huge project. It was like a $22 million project, just for the pilot.
Wow.
And it was you know, we had feature visual effects artists, sci-fi creatures. I think ultimately Amazon balked on the price tag of it because it came out really well, but then I think when they realized this was going to cost $20 million per episode, they kind of decided not to pick it up. But that was a great project too. Very, very enjoyable.
Well, that's awesome right now. So, and right now you're shopping for other projects, or you work in a couple other programs.
So now I'm doing The Equalizer for CBS, which is filming in your neck of the woods, by the way.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's filming in New York. But we're post-production and the other producers are based in LA, but we are shooting New York, New Jersey, and that's on CBS.
That's fantastic. I think in between, I want to just share with the audience that he's been on A Hand of God, as I recall, which is, I haven't watched it, but I want to watch that show, Hand of God with Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
Complications, Monk, right?
I did Monk with Tony Shalhoub. I did Burn Notice with Jeffrey Donovan. I did that for 7 years. Yep, there you go.
Right here. Burn Notice already remind me like an updated version of Miami Vice, but more international.
Yeah.
Like really cool suits, cool sets, cool action, always water in the background.
Yes.
So I love that show.
It
You
was
know?
great. It was honestly it was one of my favorite shows to work on too, because it was so unique, and we shot every episode, believe it or not, in 7 days. It was such a quick turnaround, and every week we joked around because we would have massive like car chases, explosions, gunfights, but we would pull it off every 7 days was a new episode. So we were prepping an episode in 7 days, then we were shooting an episode in 7 days. That show was pretty insane, but it was also a lot of fun.
Well, it does sound like it. So any final words for our budding filmmakers out there, or maybe filmmakers who are getting the itch again? I think as a filmmaker myself, because I directed a feature years ago, I find I want to go through these cycles, and you say, but then eventually you catch the bug, and not the COVID, you catch the writing bug, the filmmaking bug. So any final words of encouragement for those out there who maybe they have a great idea and they just can't get around to, put it into paper, or maybe have a great script and they haven't figured out, well, how am I going to make it into a film? But any final words of that?
You know what I would say is, I would say this, Dan. I would say really follow your heart. Like at the beginning of my short, there was a point where I could have gone either way. I could have said, no, I'm not going to do this short. It's going to be too much work. And then I decided I couldn't live without creating this short and not giving it a shot, and not having those creative liberties and being able to do something I was extremely passionate about. I didn't want to have any regrets. And ultimately, I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but again, when we started casting and I found my cast, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to do this no matter what. And whatever happens, but it's creatively, it's going to fulfill me as an artist and as a director and as a person and as a screenwriter. And I just really wanted to follow my heart with that. And I would suggest the same thing. Like, if you're passionate about it, just follow your heart, know that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. This short was one of the hardest things I ever did, 100%. It took me a couple times to re-edit it before I got it right. And then it's, this wasn't until my final edit that it started coming together in the way that started winning awards. And, it's not an easy task, but definitely follow your heart,
I'm glad you did. Yeah, I'm glad you did, because that's really, you created something special there.
Thank you, Dan.
Any networking opportunities, any specific there, the whole web is full of networking. Are there any organizations that you recommend that are good places to meet other filmmakers or other cast and crew? I'm not talking about festivals. We're talking about any networking that are fairly legit, because the whole web is full of scammers out there.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I love the film festival circuit, because you just meet other creative types who think outside the box. Sometimes with TV shows or, in this industry, there tends to be a certain way of thinking. But I love the film festival circuit. It's just, you're meeting creative people who are thinking of these outrageous stories you would never think of, and are just being so creative. It's hard for me to say other networking events, because I think I'm just in the industry. So
already in the industry. That's true. That's
hard. It's hard for me to say.
Follow your heart, and really representation, festivals, the way to go. And for those who are interested in catching Awake Over Bridgewater, we do there. I believe in May we're gonna have the film shown in Europe. It's being postponed continuously because of the pandemic. So even though in New York we're in Texas and Mississippi, we're in Europe, they're still in a semi-lockdown mode. So,
wow. So is this the one in France, Dan?
That's the one in France. Yes, that's the one. So they're still the whole today. So looking at May right now, and I'll keep everybody informed as a way to catch it. And I suppose at some point maybe they can catch the film on private or on Amazon or so. I guess you'll let me know, so I'll share this information with the audience at that time.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, Erik, it's been a pleasure again speaking with you, knowing that you're still rocking and rolling, making things happen. That's how we all need to do in this world. Keep the spirit alive. Let's stay in touch.
Definitely, Dan. I can't thank you enough for having me on here, and it's been such a pleasure to meet you on the initial round in New York, and I hope to make it out there soon, and you and I will meet up.
So yeah, let's definitely touch base after the program. I have a few questions for you afterwards, but in the meantime, again, thanks, Erik, for everything, for being here on the show and sharing your experience with the rest of us. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, there you have it, folks. Another edition of Philip K. Dick Talks. We really need your subscription, so please click on the bottom below, subscribe, so we can continue to bring more programs to you. It's very important for our guests and for us to have as many people out there in our base as possible. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.